Hi there, I'm Benj from Proton, the CRM built for distributors, and you're listening to In the Mind of a Distributor. This isn't your average podcast. Every time we hit record, our entire company is listening. That's because we believe the best way to build great software is to deeply understand the industry we serve. So each month, I sit down with the smartest minds in distribution to talk about what's working, what's not, and where the industry is headed. We didn't want to keep these insights to ourselves, so we're bringing them to you. Let's get into it. Jeff, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate having you on the show. Jeff has been at Specialty Building Products for 20 years. He served as CFO, president, COO, currently CEO. You guys are one of the fastest growing businesses in the building material space in North America. You've scaled through acquisitions, market expansion, value-add services. You've adopted technology really well. So really excited to dig in today to hear more about SBP, more about the strategy, and especially focus on some of the acquisitions that you guys have done, the strategy around those, capital integration challenges, et cetera. So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, glad to be with you guys. Glad to get to be with a technology group for a few minutes. It'll be fun for me.
Awesome. So starting off, would love to just hear more about your background. Like, how did you end up in distribution?
Yeah, so I'm a recovery nerd. I'm an engineer, and my kind of educational background was microprocessor-based control systems. So I was a legitimate nerd and worked in a large engineering manufacturing global business when I was in my 20s. And I ran two technology companies for founding ownership in Atlanta area. They were started smaller, high growth companies, and customers were big financial institutions. And while I was doing that, I met the founder of SBP. And we were in a business group together, kind of like a tech group or a YPO group. It wasn't one of those things, but like that. And the company had gotten to a couple $100 million in revenue and was healthy, but a little bit stuck and probably outgrown their first management team. And he and I got to know each other in that group. And the industry was real attractive to me. The company specifically was real attractive to me. He was looking for a succession plan and kind of somebody who could build the next management team. And so based on that, I joined about 21 years ago.
Tell us a little bit more about sort of the history of SBP. So how big was the business when you joined? What had the strategy been up to the point that you joined? And then take us through just briefly kind of what it's been since then.
Started a company called US Lumber. And it's really the American dream story. There's a young guy in his early 30s that was in a small building materials distributor in South Alabama that thought if he could do it his way, he could do it better. And he raised a little bit of money and had a partner, and they got started and they lost it all. And raised some more money, started again without his partner, paid that first set of investors back along the way, and built 4-branch business in Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina that merged with a similar size business, non-cash merger, similar size business in 1998 to create really what became US Lumber, which is a really good regional building materials distributor. So I came in 2003 and it's about $180 million. So he started in 87 and I came in the business in 2003. It was about $180 million in revenue. And so today we're $4 billion. So, and just to kind of give you a sense of that flow, in 2016, we were $500 million. Now, in between when I came in 2003 and 2016, there was an epic housing recession. You know, the great financial crisis of 2008 through 12.
I heard of it.
Was in there. So that was a existential crisis for anybody in housing, financial services, anywhere. So that was an adventure. So we built a really good company, about $500 million revenue company by 2016 through greenfielding into bigger territory. So we kind of got to where we would have been Baltimore, Washington market to the north, all the way to the Keys in the south, and over kind of Louisville, Nashville, down to New Orleans, if you kind of picture that on a map.
So that was all organic, funded, use the bank, go hire more reps, open a new branch, and
that's right,
and go from there.
We can logically go about 200 miles with a delivery. And so we would park another truck 200 miles out, take a trailer to that truck and go to the next markets. And then we had enough business, and then we'd put a branch in those markets. So, and branches are big for us. Where the level of distribution we're at, for it to work for us, it's got to be big. So a branch is not 20,000 square feet. A branch today is 400,000 square feet, or probably our average size branch. So you need a big base of business to make it work.
What was the algorithm for that organic growth? Because so many distributors struggle with driving organic growth like you're describing.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And it kind of taps into the next era past 2016. The hooks on our name, specialty building products, we attach to products that are taking share in the marketplace. So if anybody's got a pressure treated wood deck that looks good for 6 months and then starts to look really bad and then gets really hard, it's twisted, warped, splinters, fades, So we sell Trex decking, which is a green composite decking that's made of ground up sawdust and grocery bags, plastic grocery or Target, Walmart bags, and looks great forever and has a set of properties that's just wildly better than wood. And so that's a good example that much of our product mix, maybe most of our product mix, has that dynamic to it, where it's a newer technology that's got an aesthetic story or a total cost of ownership story or material placement story. And so we were leaders in all the new stuff always. And so that was our hook to grow the business, was being the best stuff and get scale in the best stuff. And that's what allowed for organic growth.
And that was by design or by chance? Like, had the founder sort of set it up that way, or that was something that you instituted when you came in?
When I came in the business, they were headed that way. We were early with Trex, early with other similar products and other applications like siding or, and other applications that had similar properties, and had begun to build a reputation for being good at it. So greenfielding branches, we got to 8 branches covering that broader southeastern part of the United States. And then our marketplace around us began to consolidate, particularly at our customer level. So we have a customer, Builders First Source, tickers BLDR. And so in 2016, we're still thinly capitalized, have bank revolving lines and friends and family kind of founder back. And so I went to our board and said, hey, you guys that capitalize this business, have been with it, have been through a lot and built something of real value. You don't need to go through another great recession or anything. The business certainly doesn't need to. And to be strategically positioned to be safe and to create as much value as we can in this market, we got to get a lot bigger. So the two logical ways to get a lot bigger were either sell the business to somebody who was a lot bigger or go raise some money and become that company. And so we decided to go raise some money. So we brought in a private equity partner.
What was that moment like in the boardroom? Like the founder and sort of the existing investors who'd grown the business for 40 years, were they excited about that vision, or was it a pretty emotional decision?
So many companies get into a transaction and they get all this drama and emotion around, we're going to sell the business. And sometimes that happens. You do sell the business to somebody else and now they're running it. We went out to raise money that wanted to back management. So the founder stayed with the business and he's in the business today in a healthy role. But so he wasn't going to go away. So there wasn't that, this is my baby and now it's gone. It was going to change. So it's just logical. And so we told our employees, we're going to go raise some money and bring on some investments so that we can do this in the market, which will make us safe and create incremental opportunity. And then we had a financial partner who not only made a significant equity injection into the business, but knew how to navigate the debt markets and the other things we need to do to be acquisitive. So in 2016, we're $500 million in revenue. Today, we're $4 billion in revenue, roughly. About half that growth's been acquisitive and about half that growth's been organic. And so that's kind of the journey of the last about 8 years, which has been an interesting ride.
So one of the things that strikes me about sort of your acquisition strategy, at least how you described it to me, is like the acquisitions also help drive organic growth. And that's been really core to the strategy. Can you talk a little more just about the strategy behind sort of how you buy, how you think about buying?
So I'll use an example. So in 2018, we bought a really good local distributor outside of Minneapolis, Midwest Lumber. And they were typical of what we've tried to do. So they were a really good distributor in that kind of upper Midwest area. And they had a subset of the products that SBP does. So they had a nice composite decking business, had a nice cedar business, a nice PVC trim business, and a number of other things that are similar to what we do. But they were probably missing 2/3 of our product mix. And so that becomes a platform for growth. And so that business was about $75 million in revenue when we bought it. It's $220 million in revenue today. And so it's been fun to then be able to buy a business and then help it grow. We're not the acquirer that's trying to shrink it. We're the acquirer that's trying to grow it. Then the other part of that strategy is like, we got conviction around being in the door business. So if you imagine a front door in your house that might be a double door with a transom of glass underneath and side lights, and maybe there's glass in the door, and maybe even it's fiberglass, but it's stained to look like a mahogany door. So that's complicated. We inventory all those components and remanufacture those components, assemble all that, pre-finish all that. All that's enabled by an online configurator that lets a customer build that door. So that's a really complex business with big barriers to entry and very complicated business. So we did 3 acquisitions in 2021 that all had doors in their business. And so we targeted doors. Let's acquire our way into that business. And now we probably have doors in, I don't know, maybe a third of our footprint, but now we know how to do it. And we've got that expertise in house. So we can either acquire other door distributors in our footprint, or we've now got the ability to, we can greenfield a door operation in an area where we've got customer base, because now we know how to do it and we have the relationships and technology. So both from the acquisition and from what SBP can provide and what an acquired company can provide, that wildly juices the organic growth. So it's very much a virtuous cycle.
And how have you thought about being opportunistic versus strategic in how you're acquiring? Like, are there certain geographies where you want to be in and so you're looking for businesses there? Or is it you meet the founder and, magic happens?
So we want to be in all the geographies. So today we're missing the mountain states and the West Coast in North America. So the answer to your question about how intentional versus opportunistic it is interesting. So we've been wildly intentional and worked really intentionally hard at it and specific companies and targets. And while we've been doing that, stuff has come at us that we never even thought to work on. And that's been interesting here. We have bought a number of the businesses we targeted, and we've bought a number of businesses that I didn't think we could buy or didn't know about or didn't think that would be for sale or didn't have a way to get to the owners, or it's really pretty remarkable.
And have you found that from a process perspective, that has come with you just getting on a plane and being in the market, or has it been like banker driven or both?
Yeah, it's not so much the getting on a plane thing. It starts with being in industry associations with people, or knowing somebody because we're both in the Trex channel and we're at the Trex distributor meeting, or we're on an industry board together, or we both serve Home Depot and we're at Home Depot meetings together and making friends. You got to network as a way of life, and networking to work, networking has to be authentic. You got to spend time with interesting people that have something you can learn from, or maybe they have something they can learn from you. And there's no transactional point to it.
How many deals did you look at to do the 10 that you did?
So it's not like private equity. Private equity will look at 100 deals to do one platform deal and then have less discretion around add-ons, right? So we're a big participant in the industry, so we generally know what we're looking at. And so our filter up front of do we want to look at that or not, we don't really have to get in and get deep. So let's answer it this way. I bet we've worked on 15 deals to do 10. We've only ever gotten deep in one deal we didn't do. It was values-based. The guy on the other side lied to me and wanted to retrade the deal, and we just weren't going to get in business with somebody that wasn't consistent with our values, and so we walked. That business, by the way, hasn't been sold still. So
yeah, not surprising.
Common denominator that wasn't us. Yeah, these are mostly family businesses we've bought, and it's part of our values. So one of our values would be do the right thing even when it's hard. So treating the people on the other side of a discussion with respect for their business, and knowing that we've got to behave in a way in a conversation about might we do something that doesn't leave their business damaged if we don't end up doing something. So that leads to not doing what some financial buyers will do, play with anything, say they'll do anything, maybe even try to leak it to the market or figure out a way to apply pressure, or, we don't do any of that. These are going to be our partners if we get in business with them. So that just leads to discretion up front. And so if we work on it, it's probably going to happen.
Other than sort of the cultural fit aspect you're describing, what else do you think about as a way to make yourself the acquirer of choice?
The people that have sold you their businesses in the past need to have been happy with that decision after the fact. It needs to have been good for the people that did it. I mean, holistically good. Good for the employees that work for us today, good for the owners that sold it, good for their customers and suppliers. And if you build that reputation, in fact, that Midwest lumber deal I talked about, I did not know that company existed. It was a modest sized company in Minnesota. I didn't know them from any industry stuff. And the family that had that business were friends with the owner of our first acquisition, Boston Cedar. And so one of the family guys called us and, hey, that guy said, if we're going to do this, we need to do it with you. So can we meet? That's reputation.
So once you actually sort of do the acquisition, I think probably the biggest challenge I'm guessing is on sort of the people and culture side of things. What have been some of the big learnings there as you've sort of integrated these 10 businesses?
It is complicated because people are complicated, and not just people at the companies we're acquiring, but we're complicated. Just people are complicated, right? So we test up front for cultural compatibility. You're not going to find the same culture. Every culture is different, but we're looking for values-based culture because we think that'll be compatible with our culture. So we're testing for that up front, and then we're going to do people before systems or other stuff. There would be a few things we've got to do around financial controls or things that just aren't negotiable. And so getting aligned on values and strategy is first. And then if there's any personnel cultural cleanup to be done, previous owners weren't willing to do, we will do that very fast. There was a deal that we bought that there was a bully on the management team in the deal, and the people we were dealing with on there had told us about it. And they didn't really know how to extricate themselves from the bully. He was a minority shareholder. He was the alpha in the environment. And I dealt with him some, but then methodical about building trust, with the rest of it.
During the diligence process and even before that, when you say you want to find a values-based culture, what are the things you're looking for?
No, you can tell by the way they're dealing with you. During a process. So you're talking about their earnings and you're talking about inevitably in a deal, you're talking about adjustments. People, though, will ask for all kinds of things that just aren't real and say it with a straight face and not deal with you in good faith on that. So that's a values-based issue. You pay attention to how they talk about their people. And if they've had any employment kind of claims, how they've dealt with that. You tell how they've dealt with problem employees, how they talk about their customers and vendors. And the way they talk about it, are they trying to take advantage of them? Or are they trying to serve them? But, if you're paying attention, you can get the kind of moral compass, and the what's important to them. If the sellers are real concerned that their employees end up in a good spot, you can tell by the way they handle themselves. You can also tell if they're just saying that. And I give you a personal tell when I'm getting to know somebody, the way they talk about their family, how often and the way in which they talk about, their partner or their kids or whatever they consider family tells you a lot about character. And so there are a lot of tells if you're testing for it.
How have you brought leadership teams along through the sort of acquisition journey? I mean, you guys have your leadership team, you're buying a business, obviously remove the bullies for sure, but how do you bring that team along sort of culturally?
Yeah. So one of our values is you lead through influence, not position, title, or tenure. And so we don't have a pay your dues concept with younger people or acquired people. So give them as much responsibility as we can, as fast as we can, and treat them like a partner day one. Don't have some probationary period where you distrust. Just bring them in like a partner. Be clear on our strategy. Be clear on our values. But then as we got a lot bigger in recent years, we did something that's parallel to our values. That's really almost a set of rules of engagement for how we play together. And we call it the standard. And it's specifically as a leadership team, how we're going to treat each other. That's a Patrick Lencioni concept, from Five Dysfunctions, where our first team that we're mostly aligned with is the management team, not the teams we all manage. Because companies tend to devolve into, I got to manage my branch or my group or my QA group or my whatever it is I do. But then I sit on this bigger team and I'm kind of defending my team from that bigger team. and I let that bigger dysfunctional team jack up my team. That's how human nature goes. It's the thing about an acquired business where somebody's coming in and they got to defend their team from the acquirer. And even in our existing business, got to defend their branch from. Now, the main team, the core team is the management team, and we're together. And then we're leading our teams together. And so we have something to manage too, I think is the point. That doesn't magically fix everything because you tell everybody what the standard is and give it to them. But it gives us a target to manage to. So it's not a moving target.
How you match that sort of focus on people and culture with finding the right capital partners, because often like private equity buyers don't have a reputation for building companies like you're describing. You pick the right partners, or how do you sort of match those two things together?
So I lead with our values. So my second slide in our investor deck is our values. And when talk about them, people realize it's the core. So we just re-raised a bond last fall and a term note. And, I'm telling investors we're not a successful company that also has values, but our values are causal for our success. And so here's how it works. Here's what we care about. And frankly, in today's world where there's this movement that says companies need to be about more than just making a profit, that's been an interesting movement in the world. And
conscious capitalism, I think, is
that, or even if you look at the ESG thing, or there's a bunch of stuff around that, and some of it probably gotten silly, and some of it people are thinking about differently. And that general movement is good to say that we should be about more than making a profit. Now, I don't think we have to choose. I think the things that are best for our employees and the other stakeholders around us will also be best for maximum earnings. And one of our core values is live out idealism, don't settle. And I tell our management team what that means is let's don't believe in false choices. Let's don't believe we make a difference in people's lives or make maximum profits. This doesn't make any sense, right? If we maximize the earnings and the growth of the business, we're going to maximize the size of our platform and the opportunity for the people in it, right? It all goes together. And back to your question, in today's world, the right investors for us are looking for somebody who cares about more than just making a profit. But even to the extent they care about making a profit, which they care about a lot, and which I care about a lot, they want to do it in a sustainable way. And our commitment to culture is a sustainability issue, right? Sustainability on our human capital and even our relationships in the marketplace. So it's a net add. Now, there's short-sighted, tear it down because it's broken private equity that has a 100-day plan and wouldn't want anything to do with that. And there's a place for that kind of private equity in the market for broken companies. We've had two unbelievable partners. We've been aligned with Madison Dearborn and the Jordan Company. We've had unbelievable values-based partners that have been great partners that are trying to drive a return for their investors, but identify with the values we have, and not just the firms, but the individuals. And that's been great.
To talk a little bit about integration, other than the sort of like people and culture aspects of integration, what's been your approach there, strategy on the technology side?
So the classic debate, do you need to put it all in the same ERP system, right, or not? I don't remember who on our team said it, but we were in one of those debate sessions, and somebody said, if we're going to continue to be this acquisitive, we're never going to catch that. And so we better build systems and competencies around multiple ERP systems and just acknowledge that even if we are going to try to consolidate them all, we won't catch it unless there's some future era where we cease to be acquisitive. And that was just a huge aha moment for our team, which then got us in deep into what we really need to focus on is the data coming from all the ERPs. And then the layers that can transcend all that, right? It's funny. We don't name things that creatively. A sales app that's really CRM on a phone that we don't call CRM, that transcends all our ERPs and all that data. And right, all salespeople can use, especially outside salespeople, their phones. And that's leaning on a consolidated data warehouse and some data lakes and, things that are quite expensive and take a lot of effort and are very complicated. But we've put the money and the time into those things
versus trying to smash everyone on the same ERP.
Exactly. So then the ERP just becomes a pragmatic decision that if there's we've got an ERP system with end of life issues, so you got to do something about that. And, it just becomes or if we've got multiple instances of the same ERP through acquisition, well, it's going to make sense to put that together in a single instance, but it just becomes pragmatic. And you just kind of deal with them one at a time, pragmatically.
On the tactical side, how do you actually integrate the catalogs and the customers? Do you have a team that helps with that? Do you do it on a one-off basis? We've seen that be really challenging for customers that are doing a lot of acquisitions.
It is, and it is challenging. So we've got a data team that's on that. We started within our data warehouse, kind of having a master customer record. Then you map all the other customers that are really the same customer and some on the data side. And, we're implementing right now a higher level, PIM and master data management system with some other outside tools on top of our fundamental data warehouse environment. But yeah, we've got a pretty significant data team on that. That it's hard because you not only do you inherit all the data quality issues that you inherit, right? But then in a distribution business, where what the customer most wants in a distribution business is speed. And so your integrity issues around particularly item creation in a distribution business, especially if you're on multiple ERPs, are significant. And if you're not careful, you create a bureaucracy that's the enemy of speed. And now you tear down your customer service. So there's the real world problem, right? I mean, we have all those tensions, and I think we're solving them reasonably well, but we live in the middle of all those tensions. So if I go back to 2016 and $500 million, in many ways, we could see better than we can see at $4 billion because we bought a lot of those problems. And so it's an interesting journey.
One of our values at Proton is curiosity. What's one thing after a long career and an amazing career in distribution that you're still curious about, still haven't quite figured out?
I'll tell you something that has amazed me is why people work where they work. Having bought all these companies, we've gotten to see a lot, and particularly in sales forces, we've gotten to see a lot of comp plans. And you would think that the market would be pretty efficient and that all that would be kind of similar, and it's not. And so what that means is people are choosing to work somewhere for a whole basket of reasons that I think sometimes even unclear to them, but it's not fundamentally efficient compensation. So my point to that, employees are on the runner. What does the CEO really mean by that? I mean, we're trying real hard to pay market comp, high side of market comp, pay well, show people growth. I mean, that's easy. I mean, you want great people, you got to pay them, right? I'm just surprised it doesn't feel more the same everywhere, and I can't quite rationalize to myself why. That's very curious to me.
Do you think it goes back to what you were talking about before around building a healthy organization? I mean, a lot of the things you talked about today around what makes SBP such a special place has nothing to do with how much you pay people.
Yeah, and I see comp as it's like a binary issue. Are you compensating on market well? And then even as people choose industries, there's a risk tolerance still, right? There was probably not anybody trying to choose between inside sales at SBP and being a software developer in a startup technology company, right? I mean, it's just two different places on the risk reward curve and all, right? But comp's binary in my mind. It's either you're offering a good comp package and growth or not. And then people choose to stay on a team because they believe. They like the people they work with. They like the people they work for. They believe in the mission. That's why people stay, I really think.
This is awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah, it's been great to hang out. Great to visit with you.
That's it for this episode of In the Mind of a Distributor. If you like this conversation, leave a review. It helps more folks in distribution find the show. If you're thinking about a CRM for your business, head to proton.ai to see how Proton can help you grow faster. Or if you want to connect with me, you can add me, Benj Cohen, on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.